you'll need to open the downloaded file called O1 OP template. Now once you've done that, you'll find that we have a whole number of layers to work with. You'll have to click on the very bottom one, which reads Photo, then go to File, Place, and you're going to import your photograph that you've downloaded as well from Compass. We don't copy and paste into Illustrator, we place, so we create a formal link between the image and the Illustrator file. So place, and here we are, we're all numbers, and you get a little thumbnail. So let's go to the top left corner, click and placed it. So see how now we have a little thumbnail in the photo layer. We want to lock that. Now the zoom tool that allows you to zoom in and out is Z, and you have this little magnifying glass with a plus symbol. If you go to the Option or Alt key, you can change between zooming in and zooming out. So let's just zoom in. Otherwise you go Control plus or Command plus or Command or Control minus. Alrighty, so we are going to trace. We're going to trace our faces and create a self-portrait in the style of Julian Opie. So we've got a whole bunch of different layers here. So the idea is that you use these layers according to the stated detail. So when you're drawing your face, you go to the face layer. When you're drawing your shirt collar or your shirt, you go to those layers, and at the very end we'll create a background. So let's begin maybe with the shape of our heads. Now we could either go to the rectangle tool and choose the ellipse tool and simply draw an oval that approximates our head. Illustrator uses this idea of a stroke or a line and a fill, this infill, this white, and essentially we have the ability to change whatever color those two things are. At the moment it's black and white. This could be any color whatsoever, but we'll color this later. All we really require at this moment is the black line. Therefore we click on the little white box there and go to this little diagonal red box and click on that, and immediately what you get is this blanking out of that white. So now we just have a plain old line. The only issue is it's going to be hard to see a black line over black detail, so let's just convert that into a red. So let's go to our swatches. If your swatches aren't open, you can go to Window and choose Swatches. So let's make that red. Now of course it's gone red as a fill because I had the fill box on top of the stroke box. So we need to invert the order of those two things. So I'll just go Control Z. Control Z takes you one step back, and it goes progressively. Control Z, you can go back as many steps as you wish, now, well, within reason on your presets. So we want to bring the stroke in front, so we just click on the stroke, and now we can choose from our swatches red, and now we have red on our selection. Okay, so we would like to make this a little larger, taking a corner and just dragging out, and there we go. Maybe a little bit more this way. Now it just so happens that my head is fitting the oval quite nicely. So I might just keep that. Okay. We'll be using the this black arrow, which is the selection tool. There's also this little white arrow, which is the direction selection tool. Now this is a very important little arrow here, because with this little arrow, unlike the black one, which chooses the whole object, this little arrow, you can actually click off, then click back on. And what it does, it enables us to actually move individual anchors. These little squares on the line are referred to as anchors. And by doing that, we can actually adjust detail. So because this oval is a curved line, the anchors have these handles, and these handles can be tugged to change the shape of that curve. So I can click on the anchor, I get those handles, and I can just tug at them and just change the shape, or the austerity or sharpness of the curve, or smoothness of the curve. Okay, so far that's what we've got. Now, so that's the face, or the head, and we're just going to leave it like that. Later on we'll give it a color, we'll give it a fill. So I'm going to lock that, and we'll proceed now to other parts. Okay, let's do the collar, which is making contact with the chin and jaw. Let's just zoom in. I know it's a little scary seeing up that close. So let's go to the pen tool, and the point of the whole exercise really is to get you to become more acquainted and comfortable with using this tool, the pen tool. And in the handout you'll have a description of all these various variations of the tool. The regular tool, the additional, the deletion, and the conversion tool. We're going to start with this tool. And notice that I can't do anything because I'm in a layer which won't let me. So I'm going to go to the collar layer, which I'm going to work in now, and I'm going to create this shape, just the collar. And I click and click and click and click. It's just to show you what happens when I click, move the mouse, click again. I create straight lines. Let me just get rid of all that. However, if I click and drag, then move, click and drag, what I do is create a curve. And I can do this again and again. Click and drag. Now, because the face is going to be going over the collar, it doesn't matter if I'm that accurate. So click and drag, click and drag, and this is important. When you finish a shape, it actually has to end up on the beginning point. And when you do that, what happens is on the pen you'll see a little circle or square. This idea of it's done the circuit. It's gone all the way around and it's come back to the beginning. And a little sign will say anchor. Can you see that in violet? So we click on there, and now we have a shape. It's closed. It's not an open line like this. It's in fact closed like that. Alrighty. So now a shortcut to the selection tool is V, to this tool here, and we need just to get out of the pen tool, select the shape we just created, and then go to the palette here for stroke. We need to go to the option, show options, and what you'll notice is you've got all these possible variations of how you can treat a line. A line can have sharp corners, and which go beyond the actual anchor point. So I quite prefer to use the smooth or round cap and the round join, and it gets rid of that kind of pointy end. Okay, we have one collar. Notice how it's overlapping here and it's intruding over the face. It won't matter because this layer will be above that layer. So once we fill these shapes in, the head shape will actually overlap the collar shape. Now we could have done this not in layers but in arranging, object and arrange, and this allows you to push and pull things in a certain layering within one layer. And we'll do this later, but right now, because we've got separate layers, it helps us really to organize ourselves in terms of what's what, so you don't get lost in this process. Now let's do the other collar. Now, as I'm defining the collar, I'm also defining the shape of the neck. It's doing two things at once. And see how we've got a line overlapping another line? That's not really a thing you want to do too often. You want to actually create a shape that doesn't quite overlap. I'm just going to reshape that, bring that down a bit. That's alright. Now while we're here, let's go back to the pen tool. This time I'd like you to use maybe one of these two, either adding or deleting an anchor point. Because I feel there's too many anchor points, I can just get rid of one just by using the delete anchor point. And there you go, because the rule of thumb with Illustrator is the fewer anchor points you use, the better. This is especially true with curved line. That's alright. Now another way of creating a smooth line or getting rid of anchor points is it's the smooth tool. So okay, so you make a selection, V selects, and then we can go back to the pen tool. That's the width tool. Oh, there it is. Okay, and just go over the stroke, and all it does is it actually takes some kind of calculation and takes the excessive anchor point out or in, depending on the path that you follow to smooth out that line. Anyway, you just play with it and discover for yourselves. Let's see, I think I wouldn't mind just dragging that a little this way. There we go. Now don't be too concerned about too much detail. Just think about basic shapes. Okay, so far let's have a look at what we've got. We've got I'm just going to blind out my photo. There we go. That's what we've got so far. Let's lock the collar. Let's do the shirt. Now the shirt body, as opposed to the collar, will be below the collar. I'm going to go under the collar because this won't be seen later. I'm going to intersect it here, and I'm just going to finish it off by going back up, and that's it. Now that makes very little sense, so why don't we give the collar and the shirt a color, so we can now just tell what on earth it is that we're doing. And the color you give it now does not have to be the color that you stick with. Now let me do that again. Well, I'm going to select a more than one object. So you click your first object using the selection tool, the V, and hold the shift key, go to your next object, select that, and now you've got two. You can do this 2, 3, 4. You can keep on adding to it just by holding the shift key and clicking with your selection tool. So we have to bring the fill on top, and I'm just going to get the swatches again, and I'm going to give it a light blue coloring there, and take that shape and remove it's a shape, it's not just a plain old line. You give it the same color. We can see now the effects of the stroke and fill tool, and of course I'll change these colors later. I'll change the thickness of the line even, but right now that is perfectly fine for our purposes. Let's go back to our layers, and maybe we'll do some details of the face. So we've got our shirt done, our collar done, so I'm locking those in, and now we can do features of the face. Okay, right, now if you're wearing glasses, as with all manufactured objects, they tend to be geometric, and the one great thing about Illustrator is that it's great with geometric shapes. There are these range of tools, you can create any geometric shape with them. I'm going to use this second one, which is the rounded rectangle tool, and just to create my glasses. So I'm going to click, no dragging, just clicking, and I get this little dialog box. 15. If it's too small, that's fine. I can by 10. And the most important thing is this thing here, the radius. Now with the radius, it's the softness of the corners. So I'm going to make a very gentle corner, and I'll give it a 3 mil, and I could change that later as well, but let's have a go. There we go. Let us get rid of the fill, because we don't want the fill, we want the stroke. When you scale things up or down, you're also scaling the stroke, the width of the stroke. So you'll have this little dialog box at the top, and also where the stroke is, and it'll tell you how wide that line is. In this case, it's 1.327 points. So we want 1 point, or is it 2 point? I don't know. But let's click on our original line. Our original line says it's 2 point. So that 2 now is 2 point. But when I scale it down, because in my pre-selection dialog box I've selected, so if we go to Object Transform, then go to Scale, you can actually choose whether or not under Options you want to scale things like corners or strokes. The stroke, I'm not sure whether that needs to be on a slight angle. I'm just going to just change the angle of it. I think my glasses are going on, my head's leaning to one side, so yeah. Anyway, now I don't have to do the other one. I can just go select, Control C, Control V or F. I'm going to go F. What that does, it's paste in front. So if I hold the Shift key, I can make these big chunky moves, or if I don't hold the Shift key, I can just use the arrow and I can move it in any direction. There we go. Okay, my glasses have sides, so there's two things we can do. We can use a line segment tool, and all this does is you can just go click and drag, click and drag, and click and drag. And if you're not happy with the location of certain things, you can click off, then hover over a line until you see the anchor point, select it, and just change it. It's as simple as that. And I need this little curve here, so we're going to use the pen tool for this. I'm going to go click, drag, and click, drag, and I've got myself if you're getting that thing happening where you finish a line and you've got that extension of the stroke, all you got to do is just go either A or V, and it will send you to the arrows here. Then just click off it. Okay. Okay, looks exactly like me already. Julian Opie has a very simplified way of putting eyes in place, and for him it's simply the act of creating a dot. So we're going to go to our elliptical tool. We're just going to create just anywhere actually. Hold the shift key and drag, and make sure the fill has color. So as I said, later we'll change all these things. So it's a red stroke and a red fill, and you get these little dots. Hopefully they're the right size. Remember, in the style of Julian Opie. Okay, so it's not meant to be an absolutely realistic portrait. Let's try the nose. So let's go to our pen tool. Let's zoom in. Control plus or Z will give you the magnifier. And again, you don't want too much detail. So with the nose, it's the tip. And going to the points that form the curves. And V, notice how the fill was on. We need to get rid of the fill. There it is. Now it's not a very, I've gone to the white selection arrow. There we go. We can just change a few things around, or we can go to the smooth pen tool and that's better. So I'll get rid of that. Okay. Because it's a very small image, all the fine tuning you'll do, the movements will be huge, because the larger the scale of the drawing that you're making, the incremental shifts are going to be smaller, whereas if you're working on a small drawing, those incremental shifts are going to be really large. So let's do the mouth. I'm just going to do the bottom lip. So I'm going to go click and go to the other side of my mouth and go click and give myself a, go back to A, just change the angle of that slightly. Okay, so I've got one more thing to do. Now I'm not putting eyebrows in because my glasses are sufficient signifiers of eyebrows. You may want to put eyebrows in. So I'm going to create a new layer for myself and lock this other layer, and I'm going to create a beard. I'm just going to name it Beardy. Control or Command A, and you got your stroke on top. So what you want to do is go to the palette and just go black, and click off it, and it's sort of getting there for me. What I could do is just add another little shape to it. I'm just going to add an oval there. Remember, the Pathfinder does a variety of things. I've selected the oval that I've just created and the beard. Go to merge, and there it is. I have combined the that little bit of detail. Why don't I actually give myself a preliminary color? I choose the oval, my head, and I can just go to color here. Alright. We don't want to see too much of that, so because we need to work with the hair. So let's knock that out again. So get rid of the fill. Now we're on our last layer. So let's lock all the others again, and go to the hair. Remember, the idea is that you finish off where you started, and click. Now that's a shape because it's closed, because we see that little anchor is visible, and the little pen tool with a little symbol of a circle, which signifies the completion of that circuit. Okay, I want to see my hair black, unlike my beard. There we go. Let's get rid of the photograph, and let's just drag this a bit down, get rid of the photograph, and let's have a look at the control so that select the, let's go to this layer here, face, select the face. You can select things in a layer. Now these are all locked, so let's unlock everything again, and this little circle, if you click on that, it will select everything on that layer. So in this case it's just the face, and I can choose some preliminary coloring. There you go. That's the initial draft. From this point on, it's all about refinement, going back in, adjusting the directions of line, filling in things you missed out on maybe. For example, my neck is the same color as the background. What's going to happen is when we create a background, it'll share in that color. So let's go to the background. That's one layer we haven't actually completed. Let's go there and take the rectangle tool, which is the very first one, or M, and go to the corner, bottom corner, and just drag up. And of course, because the last thing we selected was the face with that light orange, it'll be the same. Okay, so let's see, why don't we while we're there just change its color, something interesting. But you see now how my neck is in fact different from my face. I'm a Martian. Alrighty, so what we've got to do is fix that somehow. And the easiest way to fix it is either going to making a new layer above the background but below everything else, and make sure you're in that layer. Maybe we just lock the background so we don't move things around, and we can, I'm just going to do it out here first. I'm just going to make a neck, and if I go to the eyedropper, click on that, if I have the object I want to change the color, I then go to the color that I want, it will just transfer that color to the last object. So I can take that, because it's on a layer above the background, but it is below the shirt and the collar and the face and the beard. It really doesn't matter how big or accurate that is. Remember, you created a shape of the neck by default by creating the contours of the shirt collar. Remember, it's all about simplification, so it's not about how to best capture your face using the least amount of detail. Alright, let's unlock all the layers, and now that we've done our preliminary drawing, we can actually we don't have to worry about how pixelated our background photograph was. We can just enlarge everything. So let's go to Object, Transform, and Scale, and let's look at increasing it by 250%. We want to scale up the corners, we want to scale the strokes. Okay, so alright, nice. And hold the Shift key. With the little arrows, you can move your image around pretty quickly and accurately. Remember, the Shift key gives you large incremental shifts, movements, whereas if you don't hold the Shift key down and you just use the arrow, is small movements, small increments. Alright, so what I've noticed is that my glasses in fact have a slight little angle on which follow my nose. So I'm going to try to do that as well. I'm going to try to shift that angle. So I don't need to do two of these, I only need one, so I'm going to get rid of that one. I'm going to take that, I'm going to go Control C, V, there it is. Let me just drag it here for you so you can see it. And now I'm going to go Reflect. I'm going to Transform, Reflect. I'm going to reflect it, okay, there we go. Now I can take that and place it into position, and it needs to be maybe played with a bit. There we go, and that's better. Now you can actually see the shape of my nose. Talking about the shape of one's nose, you can actually see how this could benefit from a bit of tugging down. That's better. So I've just miniaturized my beard a little bit by squashing it, selected, went to the middle, brought it down. Alrighty, and now what we can do is let's play with proportions and scale. With the Opie portraits, he tends to maximize the size of the image. Doesn't show much of the background or of the chest. We're going to do something quite similar. So hold down your Shift key, go to the corner, everything's been selected, and drag it, and everything will drag and it will become proportionally the same. So yeah, okay, let's just round that off to 9 point. That's a little thicker, and there we have it.